Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter, X, whatever, at TDC_Calvin. You can find the podcast on X at FF After Dark. Podcast is available on Spotify, YouTube, Google, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts, wherever you watch them, Rumble. If you're looking for us, we're just the Dynasty After Dark podcast. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. And today I'm excited because I'm going to be talking about Jonathan Taylor. We kind of teased this. We knew today would be the day, or last night would be the night that we found out where Jonathan Taylor would end up. There was a lot of reports that he was going to be traded. He requested the trade. You know, there's the whole ongoing saga between him and Jim Irsay and the Colts. They don't want to pay him, but they want a first-round pick for his talents, right? And it doesn't really make a ton of sense. I mean, I get it from a team perspective. It's BS. It's really screwing the player. Like, if you want to come across as and I think Jim Irsay does, he wants to come across as a player's owner, right? Where he's one of the guys. He gets along with and gets in touch with his players, right? And wants to be liked by him and everything like that. Well, it's really weird that, you know, one of the faces of this entire organization and this offense right now, you're kind of screwing them over a little bit, but we'll get into this and all of my thoughts here in just a minute. So, like I said, there was a lot of reports that, you know, Jonathan Taylor wanted out of Indianapolis. Where was he going to go? Miami popped up as the number one potential contender. And the good news is, even though they didn't get a trade done today, it doesn't completely shut the door on Jonathan Taylor moving to another team in season. So there is still always that possibility. And if somebody's trading for Jonathan Taylor, I think they're going to utilize him to his fullest potential. Now, Jonathan Taylor himself, let's jump into him really quickly, because he goes back to the Indianapolis Colts. And, you know, I think most people probably already know that at this point, but if not, he goes back to the Colts. They did not agree to a trade with the Dolphins or the mystery third team, whoever that was, the Eagles. You know, the Bills reached out on this guy as well a little bit, but they didn't get anything done. So he goes back. They also put him and kept him. He was already on the PUP, the physically unable to perform list. He stayed on the PUP after the non-trade, I guess. And that means that because the cut down is due today, because he was on the PUP and they didn't activate him from that, he will be out for the first 4 weeks of the 2023 NFL season. Now, the implications of this, and again, let's go back to Jonathan Taylor himself really quickly. Him playing with the Indianapolis Colts is not a bad thing. I think that the Colts have an above average offensive line. They have a good head coach that is going to be able to utilize his skill set really well. Shane Steichen, who comes over from the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, obviously they had Miles Sanders last year, who was just tearing it up. They've got Anthony Richardson, who is, you know, you'd hope similar to Jalen Hurts over there with the Eagles. And you think that Jonathan Taylor, with what his skill set is, could be back to being one of those elite level players, right? 5'10", 226 pounds. He looks like a linebacker in a running back's body. He's just pure muscle, and he's just a big dude. 24 years old. He's only played in the league for 3 years. His rookie season comes out, second round pick out of Wisconsin, comes out as the RB6 overall in 2020. 1,100 yards as a rookie. He has 36 catches, which is pretty good. You know, Jonathan Taylor has decent hands, not the best hands, but decent. You know, he's never going to get 75 targets like a lot of these guys, but 36 catches in his freshman year, 40 receptions in his second year, just a couple years ago, when he was the number one overall running back in PPR. And the guy is just very, very good. He's got a nose for the end zone. In 2021, when he was the number one overall running back, he had 20 total touchdowns, 1,800 rushing yards that year, by the way. In his rookie year, 12 touchdowns. Last year, this offense just absolutely falls apart, finishes the season as RB 33 overall, only played 11 games, and he had an ankle injury, and this is what is a little confusing right now about Jonathan Taylor. They put him back on the PUP because of the ankle injury. Now, does his ankle still bother him or not? everyone that I've seen talk about this ankle injury said that it was basically like a 2-month recovery time, and that was last year. He should have been fully recovered by the end of the 2022 season. So did he re-injure it? Did he tweak it again? Is it something else entirely? We will know soon, because as of right now in the preseason, they don't have to report, official injuries. But once the NFL season actually rolls around, they will have to disclose actual injuries and why these guys are there. And, all reports are that it's still the ankle, but it seems a little fishy to me. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but all of the doctors that I've seen talk on this say that it should have been something that was fully recovered about 8 months ago at this point in time. So something's a little weird there. And a lot of people out there are also saying, oh, well, the Jim Irsay and the Colts are just throwing him on PUP as a punishment. But he gets 100% of his pay for those 4 weeks that he's on the PUP. So it doesn't really make sense if you don't want to pay the running back to put him on the PUP where, it kind of helps him out if he wants to do a holdout anyway. It's just kind of a weird situation there. But there is the added effect that if he doesn't get activated by week number 6 in the NFL season, then this year of his contract could not toll for this season, essentially meaning that it won't count for an accrued year on his contract. So he would be under contract again for the Colts in 2024. So there might be some foul play there, but I think that if he was not injured, he would immediately come back and push back on being on the PUP. I don't think it's in his best interest, especially with them not being able to get a trade partner. They can still work something out, like I mentioned earlier, but it just it's too risky, in my opinion, that if they put him on the PUP and he doesn't get activated by week 6, it's too risky that you're not going to be able to get to the open market next year. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think that there's something going on that we don't have all the information on. That's the only thing that makes sense to me right now. I do think that Jonathan Taylor is probably more healthy than not, and they're just kind of being a little safe with him as well, trying to let the situation cool off a little bit and, maybe letting him kind of accrue a little bit of game time where he doesn't have to necessarily play the 4 games. If I was putting my money down on this is my guess. I think that they're putting him on the PUP so that he doesn't have to get the wear and tear on his body. He gets full pay. It's Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard kind of trying to help Jonathan Taylor out and let this whole situation calm down. Jonathan Taylor doesn't want to play without a long-term contract. Ballard and Irsay have said, Ballard at least has said that they want Jonathan Taylor to be here for a long period of time, but it just didn't make sense with the whole contract extension now, things like that. So I think that they're going to try and make him an offer eventually here in season, and they're just kind of using the PUP to let him cool off a little bit, let the whole situation cool off. He doesn't get a lot of wear and tear on his body for those 4 games. He gets paid for those 4 games, and then he comes back fully rested in week number 5 and, is ready to roll. And whether he, ultimately signs a long-term contract with the Colts, he's going to come out, ball out, and then, maybe earn himself a trade. Who really knows? But I do think that there's a little bit of gamesmanship that's going on with the PUP right now. So I still think that if you're in a redraft league, Jonathan Taylor, he's very scary because he's going to be missing the first 4 weeks minimum. And it could potentially, if there is an actual injury, that could linger past those 4 weeks. So, from a dynasty perspective, I have no fears about Jonathan Taylor whatsoever. Again, he's only 24 years old. He is a very, very good player. There's a reason why he was the Breece Hall, the Bijan Robinson for many, many years, the number 1 running back for the last couple years. Last year, I think that's kind of painting him in a bad light in a lot of people's minds because, he finishes the RB33, the offense was just terrible, and Jonathan Taylor, it really felt like he wasn't trying as much, and he couldn't just single-handedly carry that team because Matt Ryan last year was absolutely terrible. So I think that it's kind of put people off of him, and they forgot what Jonathan Taylor can do a little bit. But man, Jonathan Taylor, he's such a special athlete. I was really hoping he'd go to Miami because I think that the way that system works with the running back, he would have like 2,500 yards if he played a whole season with them. I honestly believe that. But yeah, I think that Jonathan Taylor for Dynasty is just fine. He's still going to be in the top 5 for my Dynasty rankings. He's only 24 years old. He has this ankle injury that kind of limited him. But before that, he was a workhorse for the Colts. He was a workhorse in Wisconsin. Never really missed a lot of time. And he has never really had an injury history in the past. So I don't think that there's anything to do with that personally, but I do think that there could be something that's still lingering, or again, some gamesmanship that's kind of going on right now. But for Dynasty, no worries whatsoever. You should still have a good asset, and if you can buy Jonathan Taylor cheap in any of your leagues right now, I would recommend trying to do that, because I still think he's got top 5 potential for many seasons left. He's just too prototypical of a running back, and we've seen him. He's too good of a player to really just fall off a rock completely. Now, just quickly, if you're going to be targeting a running back for this offense that you want to roster in the interim while he's missing those 4 games and potentially longer, I've seen it talked about a lot of guys interested in Zach Moss, Evan Hall, Deion Jackson. Those are the 3 main guys. I probably am going Evan Hall, and that's about it. And, I think that Anthony Richardson is going to get opened up a lot more. They're going to scheme him a lot more run plays. And when you look at the opening matchups for this team, right? Week 1, they've got Jacksonville. Week 2, Houston. Week 3, Baltimore. And week 4, the Rams. The Rams is the big one where, Aaron Donald is still a monster on that team. I think that they're going to really try to use Anthony Richardson's legs in that game a lot, but I think it's a very soft opening to the schedule, and you don't really need to lean on the run game as much in those games in my opinion. Jacksonville, it's going to be a competitive game. It's at home opener. Houston, they always play really well against them down in Houston. Baltimore, that's going to be a tough one. Again, the Rams is going to be a tough one, but none of those games really need to be run game focused, and I don't think Zach Moss is a good player. Deion Jackson has shown some flashes, but again, if I'm investing in one, it's going to be Evan Hall, and that's about it, because he's a rookie. We don't know what to expect from him fully on the NFL level. The other 2 we've seen at an NFL level, and it's just not anything spectacular. So, I think I've seen a lot of people talking about Zach Moss is going to be able to carry this team in his absence. We'll have to see on the field, but I don't believe that personally. I've been burned by Zach Moss too many times at this point. So that's my thoughts on Jonathan Taylor. I think it's not as bad a situation as a lot of people I've seen on X kind of talking about recently. It's a little concerning for early in the season, especially in redraft again for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe you're going to be able to get him at a massive discount in your drafts, like 3rd, 4th round maybe. We'll see how far he kind of falls in those with the pup and missing 4 games. But again, for Dynasty, he's still a top 5 asset. If you can buy him cheap right now, because people are kind of freaking out, oh, the Colts, they don't get along and all this stuff. A couple $1 million goes a long way. We've seen it with Josh Jacobs. We've seen it with Saquon. It's entirely possible the Colts throw Jonathan Taylor $2 million once he gets off the pup, and after the end of the season they get a long-term deal done, they trade him in season, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to go somewhere that is going to just maximize his talent next year. So that's my thoughts on JT. I think it's not as bad a situation as everyone kind of fears. There's nobody really I want to roster behind him in the absence, but it could have been a lot worse. He could have gone to Philadelphia and just absolutely nuked everybody's, shares of everything there, or, some of these other teams that were linked. So could have been worse. It could be better as well. I like the Colts, but obviously wearing a Colts shirt right here. Lived in Indiana most of my life, so I like having good players like Jonathan Taylor on the Colts to kind of watch on a weekly basis. But yeah, it could be much worse for sure. So let me know your thoughts on this, and if you agree with what I'm saying or not down in the comments. While you're there, if you can, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out more content. Tomorrow, we're going to be finishing our final rookie rankings with the wide receiver and tight end position. So make sure you guys come back and check that out. Again, you can find me on X at TDC_Calvin, the podcast at FF After Dark. Until next time, thank you guys so much for listening, and good night.